Hello and welcome to another week of PUBH 612. Today we will review Chapter 2 of Issel and Wells on the relevance of diversity and disparities to health programs. The learning objectives for the day are to define, describe, and measure diversity, to explain health disparities, and to assess the level of cultural competency of staff, yourself, and an organization. Diversity is a term that most of us are probably very familiar with, as we often use it to describe how people of different race, ethnicity, or cultures differ. However, in the context of health, we more broadly consider diversity with regards to how groups differ in their beliefs, values, behaviors, etc. Therefore, within one racial and ethnic group, there may be many subgroups with different cultures and beliefs, which will lead to very different behaviors which may impact their health. Culture is a set of beliefs, values, and norms that are shared by a group of people. An individual's culture impacts their mental and physical health. Your textbook cites a study which found different levels of pain tolerance between Italians, Swedes, and Saudis, demonstrating that how one experiences illness may vary based on culture. In public health, we often talk about socioeconomic status and the relationship between socioeconomic status and health status. Numerous studies have found that people of lower socioeconomic status have worse health outcomes, regardless of other characteristics. For example, mothers with less than high school education had 1.7 times the likelihood of having a child with attention deficit disorder, and coming from a low-income family raised that risk to more than 2.2 times. The fact that socioeconomic status has such a strong impact on health outcomes suggests that we need to be designing health programs that target certain socioeconomic status groups, not just cultural, racial, or ethnic groups. Disparities in healthcare are defined as differences by race or ethnicity in access to or the quality of healthcare that are not due to the health or clinical needs or preferences of the person. Health disparities affect the health of individuals and families. For example, African Americans have nearly twice the rate of low birth weight babies and infant mortality as white Americans. The causes of health disparities are the subject of research, but most theories recognize that health disparities have multiple overlapping causes that are socioeconomic, cultural, and biological. For example, the lifetime racial stress experienced by Black women in America leads to increased levels of cortisol, which has been associated with preterm birth and low birth weight babies. Disparities can be seen by looking at mortality and morbidity rates in vital statistics or data on access to care and levels of healthcare utilization. For example, Black women have higher mortality rates from breast cancer than any other racial ethnic group. In order to address health disparities, organizations need to have culturally competent staff that can understand and communicate with the population, and interventions and programs need to be tailored to fit the needs of different groups. However, interventions may also be multiple and use targeted messages for different subgroups. Disparities in diversity can be reflected in health policy and priorities and organizational processes and culture. For instance, does your organization have policies and resources to support community outreach to people with limited English proficiency? Please see the full checklist on page 48 in your textbook to assess how well your organization facilitates services for diverse populations. In the late 1990s, President Clinton put race and diversity on the public agenda, and the National Institutes of Health and the Department of Health and Human Services began funding research to address racial disparities. Furthermore, there are accessibility and anti-discrimination laws, which are aimed to prevent and/or to mitigate disparities. Program managers need to be sensitive to the degree of fit between the organizational culture and the goals of the health program. Does the organization incorporate consumers or patients in decision making, or about the health program and its development? How appropriate are the materials, resources, and the environment? I encourage you to look around the waiting room the next time you go to the doctor's office. What language are the signs? Who's pictured on the walls? And what do the staff look like? Regarding what staff look like, it is important that staff reflect the community they are trying to serve. And all staff, regardless of race, need to be aware of their own implicit biases and how they may impact their work. Organizations interested in being more culturally competent can organize trainings to foster a more inclusive and culturally competent workforce. One approach to fostering diversity is through including diverse stakeholders in the development and evaluation of a health program. This can be done through forming a coalition, or a group of individuals or organizations coming together with a common goal. Here you will see some of the key aspects of a successful coalition, such as one that encourages member participation, an inclusive leadership style, and diverse membership. Having formal rules and procedures are also essential to keeping a coalition focused. At each level of the public health pyramid, diversity and disparities are reflected. For instance, at the direct services level, staff should be trained in cultural competency, and the interventions should match the culture and language of the population being served. At the population-based services level, disparities are revealed in vital statistics, and interventions can be targeted to many or individual subgroups based on the data and population needs. More broadly, think about the infrastructure of your organization or our country. What systems, policies, laws are in place, and how do they impact diversity? Do they foster cultural competence and aim to reduce health disparities? If not, I encourage you to think of what structural changes could be made and what role you could play in fostering that change. Disparities in health outcomes are a critical challenge in the US, and we all need to play our part in ensuring optimal health and wellness for all people. So the key takeaways for this week: first, diversity in the context of health goes beyond race, ethnicity, country of birth, or language. It is important to take a broad view of diversity to ensure that you're able to identify subgroups within communities which may be impacting health. Addressing health disparities is a public health priority. It's important for you to understand how health disparities in the US negatively impact health outcomes. Organizations can become more culturally competent with the right staff, policies, and leadership. Coalitions can also be used to help bring diverse stakeholders together for a common cause. Don't forget the tips on what makes a coalition effective. And lastly, diversity is an important consideration at every level of the public health pyramid, regardless of which level you intend to work. Make sure you aim to increase diversity and decrease health disparities. Here on slide 12 are some additional internet resources. Please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. Thank you.